again, everybody. And Greg, thank you very much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to meet you today. And actually, I've been reading in the press a lot about Saudi Arabia, tourism, leisure, hospitality, the growth of the hotel business, and particularly the big ambitions for the Red Sea. So it's fantastic we've got you here today. So tell us a little bit about Red Sea Global, about the current state of your investment in Saudi and your ambitions. What's happening right now?
Thank you, and Stephen, lovely to meet you as well. It's an extraordinarily exciting time, not only for the kingdom, but also for Red Sea Global. So we've been at it now for over 5 or 6 years, and primarily as a developer. We've become a vertically best-in-class integrated developer in Saudi. We've been actively executing across our developments, but what makes this year extraordinarily exciting is we are pivoting to being an operator now. We actually have open hotel assets. So we've opened now a Six Senses, Southern Dunes, which as the name suggests is this lovely kind of dune plateau looking over the desert a little bit inland.
Is that now a brand or is that a
That's Six Senses. It's a branded hotel. And then we've also opened a St. Regis and a Ritz-Carlton Reserve, and there are only 7 reserves in the world, so it's a pretty high bar for those. So those 3 hotels are now actively open and being operated by us. And so we're operating. We're also, I'm excited to kind of mention, is we're opening 2 more assets imminently in that same area. One is Shabara, and I don't know if anyone in the audience has seen these kind of metallic steel orbs on social media, but we're opening up Shabara in the next really weeks. And then another iconic resort that we call Desert Rock, which we've kind of tunneled into a mountain face. And you will have kind of cave and crevice suites overlooking incredible vistas over kind of this rocky moon-like landscape and some amazing stargazing and things like that. So those are the kind of most exciting events of this year in terms of pivoting into operations.
And just to be clear, those 3 hotels you mentioned, there are guests currently staying. I mean, I'm imagining it might be a little difficult transition because presumably there's an awful lot of construction still going on, but there are guests in hotels.
So it's a great question. So those 2 hotels I mentioned that are on the sea, the St. Regis and the Red Sea, the St. Regis and the Ritz-Carlton Reserve, those are mono islands, so they're separated. Our main hub island, called Shura, is opening at the end of 2025. That will be 11 hotels, which is kind of the main event for us as a developer for phase 1 of Red Sea project. And to your point, when we open those assets, we'd like to do it kind of Big Bang style. They all open at once, and there's not construction visible to another hotel when you're opening a hotel, a few hundred meters down.
And in terms of infrastructure, I believe I'm right in saying that the Red Sea International Airport is now open. It's been operating for a little while.
Yeah.
So is that going to be your hub to get people into the Red Sea ventures that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we've opened an airport. Red Sea International RSI. It's about 18 to 20 minutes to the main hub island, connected by a causeway. So it's going to be a lovely airport, but it is actually, to your point, open. We've opened the seaplane terminal first because we need to be able to get our guests to the St. Regis and the Ritz-Carlton Reserve, which is either accessible by boat or seaplane. And then the main terminals will come online at the end of this year. So the airport will be, but the airport is already fully active. We have flights coming in from Riyadh, at least 4 a week. We have a couple coming in from Jeddah. We have flight connectivity now with Dubai, and in the fullness of time, we expect European carriers and others to become interested in flying in directly as well.
So that phrase, fullness of time, just paint me a picture, let's say, I don't know, a decade on from now. How many beds are there going to be in these various different Red Sea resorts? I mean, what kind of scale are you imagining?
So look, I should say we have Red Sea Phase 1, and to your point, there'll be future phases through 2030, but it's important to mention we have another very significant project about 150 kilometers up the coast called Amala. They're differentiated. Red Sea I would describe more as kind of island archipelago, barefoot luxury, some of the hotels we just mentioned. Amala has a different topography. You have cliffs and bluffs that are coming up to the coastline and 3 naturally occurring bays. And we're going to position that more as a wellness haven. So we've already agreed deals with groups like Clinique La Prairie and Djerejian and others. And so that's a long-winded way of saying we will have a significant amount of keys at Red Sea, but also Amala. So over a 3 to 5 year horizon, we're talking 4,000 or 5,000 keys. And then as you go forward more towards post-2030, there'll be increment on top of that.
I mean, that's a lot, but it sounds from what you're saying as though it's all kind of luxury high-end. You can define some of it as wellness, some of it more sort of experiential or beach-based or whatever, but it's all high-end, right?
I think I think if you take the Maldives as a comparison, right? And by the way, the Maldives, I think, has over 20,000 keys. So when you look at it in that perspective, it's not a massive amount that we're teeing up. But I understand your point. We are positioned at a pretty robust, position in the market. They're incredibly...
Is that code for expensive?
No, what I'm saying is that if you come, first of all, the natural environment is exceptional, truly pristine. I was gobsmacked coming in looking at the Red Sea for the first time, and frankly, I view it as superior to the Bahamas or the Maldives in some aspects in terms of the water. Then we've taken this extraordinary care with respect to the development, these beautiful kind of low-density architecture in terms of the rooms. So the rooms, it is a luxury product, but I think it's important for us to also develop more in the middle market and the upper middle market segment as well. And I think, Stephen, you'll see that as we continue to roll out pipeline in KSA, we'll have product offering that will appeal to different segments in the market. The other thing I'd say is even in the hub island of Shura itself, you'll have hotels at different price points there as well. So it's not meant just to be kind of a luxury ghetto.
Yeah. Now, we build this as a talk, hinged on this idea of regenerative tourism. Frankly, people like you come up on the stage, Greg, and they talk about their commitment to long-term net zero and how everything they do is all about sustainability and da-da-da-da-da. We hear that all the time. But then, when we get specific, we hear about, the steel pods being put on the coastline. We hear about you drilling into the cliffs to create new hotels. And I'm just thinking to myself, that doesn't sound altogether regenerative. So how can you claim this word regenerative?
Well, look. First thing I'd say is something that we're extraordinarily proud about is that these assets are completely off-grid. So we are 100% powered by renewables night and day. So we have over 760,000 photovoltaic solar panels, solar farms, multiple solar farms. And then attendant to that, what's one of the world's largest battery storage farms at 1,300 megawatts to power this off-grid. That was not the cheapest option for us, Stephen. That comes at a price. So we're not that's just not, idle chatter. It's real. So that's one significant thing I'd say. Another one I'd say is that we did a very serious baselining effort when we inherited these assets in 2017, 2018, where we had a whole environmental team go out and look at the natural environment, the corals, the mangroves, the quality of the water, et cetera. We publish that. We have an annual sustainability report. And as someone who works closely with investors and knowing the ESG space, I fully expect going out a few years, there are going to be a lot of third-party credentializers and other players in this space. They're going to say, show us, prove to us what you're doing, that it's real.
You will be audited. You're probably one of the most heavily scrutinized new, ambitious, hotel and leisure projects in the entire world. And for all sorts of reasons, it is going to be very heavily scrutinized.
Yeah, so I think that baselining effort, I think, is another aspect of our environmental bona fides. I'd also say this archipelago where Red Sea Phase 1 is located, there are 90 islands in it. We're developing in probably 22 of them maximum. So we're leaving a lot of them completely untouched. And we're not looking to ratchet up our visitor numbers wildly. I think our broad targets when we're at steady state would be about 1 million visitors per annum at Red Sea and about 500,000-ish at Amala. So we're not talking about massive footfall. Again, we like to say we're trying to move beyond sustainability to regeneration. Sustainability meaning we're not going to leave the place worse off than we found it. We're saying we want to try to leave it better, to improve it while we're there. The proof will be in the pudding, to your point, but I would say that's really a fundamental part of our ethos from our chairman and CEO on down.
This is an investment that's driven by Saudi money, right? By the Saudi, what you might call their sovereign wealth fund. They're your prime investor.
So we're a wholly owned subsidiary of PIF. So they're our mother company, and we are broadly funded by PIF equity. But we've been able, I think, to do a reasonably nimble job of trying to diversify our capital structure. So a few examples of that. A couple years ago, we closed on a 14 billion SAR debt finance facility to actually construct what we described Phase 1 of Red Sea. We had some very prominent Saudi banks in the mix who believed in our vision and were willing to put their debt behind us. And we've also been able to tap into private sector capital, which I think has been great. We've done 2 joint ventures. Our first one was with the Mutlaq Group, Tariq Mutlaq, who's principal of a large Saudi family office, partnered with us on a 50-50 JV for the Jumeirah Hotel. So the same brand, obviously, that we're sitting in here today, the Jumeirah, they'll be on Shura. Then we did another joint venture with Prince Al Walid's Kingdom Holdings for the Four Seasons, which we thought was a great deal because, as you're probably aware, Prince Al Walid had been an investor historically in the Four Seasons, knows the brand well. So we felt it was a good strategic partner, especially for that hotel asset. So we've had those two JVs consummated. We've had the debt financing, and we're still in the market looking for other funding potentially going forward.
I mean, you're part of obviously a much wider story of change inside Saudi Arabia. To what extent do you sometimes worry about, whether the political climate might change, about the long-term commitment to the opening up of Saudi Arabia, the reform of Saudi Arabia? Because if it were to change, these major investments you're talking about might suddenly look a little less secure.
Look, I think His Royal Highness's focus on Vision 2030 has just been a kind of paramount thrust with respect to the kingdom. And I think what's clear is that there's a strategic imperative to diversify from hydrocarbons over a 30, 40, 50-year horizon and to find GDP sources in other parts of the real economy. And I'm not going to comment on other sectors, but for tourism, I think globally, generally, the tourism markets tend to contribute about 10% to GDP across a variety of countries. And I think having a 10% GDP as part of the Saudi tourism story would be tremendous for the kingdom. I think what's so exciting for us at Red Sea Global is we're moving a little bit beyond. You had a lot of religious and Hajj-style tourism. You had traditional kind of business tourism in Riyadh and Dammam and Jeddah. We're now helping the kingdom launch kind of a more of a luxury or even upper middle market, ultimately, tourism, which helps open Saudi to the world. And so I think it's a significant part of Vision 2030 that I don't think is going to go away.
But I guess what I'm driving at is that you need to believe that the opening up will work in a way which means, the upper end and upper middle market tourists who, and let's just be specific about it, might want to drink in a hotel in Saudi Arabia is going to be able to do that. And I guess, some of these decisions about where Saudi's going are things you can't control, but you have to believe it's going to work in terms of your model.
Yeah, well, those types of policy issues, as you can imagine, are well above my pay grade. I will say, on the question of alcohol, we've underwritten our assets on the basis of having sufficient amenities and offerings at our resorts that we don't view it as necessarily being mission critical. And at the risk of sounding a little bit facetious, we'll have tremendous and varied mocktails and a variety of offerings. But I would say on a more serious note, there are trends. People are consuming, I think, less alcohol. That seems to be a trend in certain generations. And Amalo is a wellness haven. It's not something you would typically associate with that. So we're quite comfortable that the amount of activation we're providing works in the current parameters of Saudi requirements.
And another thought about your relationship with Saudi. I mean, we talked a little bit, well, we talked quite a lot because it's important about your environmental impact, but then there's also your impact on communities, non-Saudi Arabia itself. And, Saudi Arabia has a very large indigenous population. Young people in Saudi Arabia in the past have sometimes complained about lack of job opportunities, skilled work for themselves. How are you making sure that you are properly integrated into Saudi, offering jobs to Saudi people, skills, training, a professional career?
Yeah, so we've collaborated. So we've had several initiatives. One of the most notable ones is we've collaborated with Prince Megrin University and collaboration also with the École d'Hôtellerie de Lausanne, so hotel specialists, where we're training up hotel staff because again, this is a different type of tourism offering than has prevailed in Saudi in the past. And I'd say we also have a vocational training institute with a similar goal. These are some of the things we're truly most proud of, Stephen, because part of Vision 2030, you've got 70% of the population under the age of 30, 35. You want to be providing jobs, and I'm telling you, as someone who's stayed at these hotels that are now open, that the sense of national pride you feel from the Saudi nationals that are working there, that they are helping introduce these resorts to the world, is palpable. It truly is. And we've had a lot of visitors just from KSA, but we've also now tapped into 20 different countries have already visited just these 3 hotels that are already open. And I think the Saudi staff are excited and proud of that.
Well, actually, just let's end on that thought. I mean, we're talking about the scope, the ambition in Saudi Arabia, and particularly the Red Sea is so fascinating. Do you think that Saudi ultimately is going to become the giant of this region? I mean, obviously, I'm thinking about how this feels to people in UAE, where they've built an incredibly successful tourism business, but is Saudi eventually going to dwarf it?
I don't want to comment. In the host country, in a different environment here, look, I think Saudi has a very large population compared to some of its neighbors. It's pretty amazing, having lived there almost three years now, to see the amount of activity that's going on in Saudi Arabia. I would just say I think the pie is big enough for all. But I'm tremendously excited specifically about the opportunities in the kingdom.
Well, it is an amazing story, and we'll continue to follow it. Greg, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Sackur.